Hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we will be leaking the documentation for SCP-701. It has an object class of Euclid, and the special containment procedures are as follows. All materials relating to SCP-701 are to be kept in a triple-locked archive at storage site Redacted. These items currently consist of 2 currently extant copies of the 1640 Quattro, 27 copies of the 1965 trade paperback edition, 10 copies of a 1971 hardcover printing, 21 floppy diskettes consisting of data seized from raids on data expunged, 1 SVHS video cassette tape designated SCP-701-19-A, and 1 steel knife of unknown origin designated SCP-701-19-B. At no time are any of these items to be removed from the room. Access to the area is to be heavily monitored. Absolutely no personnel whatsoever is to be granted access to the archive without express in-person permission of Doctors L, R, and J. Description: SCP-701, The Hanged King's Tragedy, is a Caroline-era revenge tragedy in 5 acts. Performances of the play are associated with sudden psychotic and self-terminating behavior among both observers and participants, as well as the manifestation of a mysterious figure classified as SCP-701-1. Historical estimates place the number of lives claimed by the play at between Redacted and Redacted over the past 300 years. Performances of The Hanged King's Tragedy do not always end with an outbreak. Of the Redacted recorded performances, only Redacted, 36.78%, have ended in SCP-701 event. According to historical records and investigations, these outbreaks generally follow the same pattern. 1 to 2 weeks, 7 to 14 days, prior to the event, during the dress rehearsal period, cast members will begin to spontaneously deviate from the published text of the play, rather than improvisation or gaffes associated with going off script. Said deviations will be both orderly and consistent, as if the actors were working off a new version of the script. The cast and production crew will seem unaware of any change and, if it is brought to their attention, will state that the play has run that way from the beginning. 2 to 3 hours prior to the event. The outbreak generally occurs during opening night, or else at the production with the greatest planned attendance, generally falling within the first week after the play's opening. 1 to 2 hours before event. SCP-701-1 begins to appear on stage in the final scene of Act 1, generally in the background or to the side of the main action. It may seem to enter or exit the stage area, but does not appear to ever enter the backstage or offstage area. It simply disappears when not on stage. The cast does not appear to notice or comment on SCP-701-1, at least at first. The event, SCP-701-1, appears fully on stage during the banquet scene in Act 5. Here it will be incorporated into the action of the play as the Hanged King. The cast will either terminate each other or self-terminate, sometimes using items that seem to appear spontaneously on stage. Rioting breaks out in the audience, with viewers randomly attacking anyone in front of them, regardless of prior relationship. Following the event, if any of the audience members survive the initial outbreak, they may exit the performance space, in which case they will continue to engage in random or opportunistic violence. Victims will generally require sedation or restraint in this scenario. Normal personality will begin to return roughly 24 hours after the event. Surviving victims will generally exhibit signs consistent with a traumatic experience. Some will have no recollection of the event. Others may be rendered permanently comatose or psychotic. For a typical case study of an outbreak, see Incident Report SCP-701-19-1. An analysis of the events leading up to the last uncontained SCP-701 event in Redacted during a high school drama performance in Redacted. For more information on the play's published text, see document SCP-701-1640-B-1. In short, SCP-701 is a self-evolving memetic virus transmitted through unknown means through the text of the play. Dr. L has theorized that SCP-701 events may involve data expunged. This hypothesis is consistent with a spike in redacted levels detected via satellite in the vicinity of redacted incident indicating expunged. Foundation agents are under standing orders to suppress any performance or publication of SCP-701 whenever found or detected. Despite our best efforts to the contrary, however, the play remains freely available online, sometimes under different titles. All attempts to detect or isolate the origin of these copies have failed. Suppression of the play's publication has generally been successful, with most copies of the 1971 scholarly edition destroyed before distribution. Nonetheless, copies of the 1965 trade paperback turn up with some regularity in both college and high school libraries. Agents are to obtain or otherwise destroy these items whenever possible. History. The first known publication of the Hanged King's tragedy was as a quattro dated 1640. The play's author is not listed. The publisher, one William Cook, disappeared from the historical record soon thereafter. Strangely, the text does not appear in the stationer's register. The first known SCP-701 event on record occurred sometime in the 1800s during a performance of the play in Redacted, USA. Other significant incidents include the Redacted performance at a small theater in Redacted, the 1964 performance at the University of Redacted, the performance at Redacted University, the first SCP-701 event successfully suppressed by the Foundation, the Redacted performance by a student group in Redacted, California, the Redacted television adaptation by the Redacted Broadcasting Corporation, production successfully shut down by the Foundation before broadcast, and the Redacted incident in Redacted, Ohio, USA, designated SCP-701-19-1. Publication history. Original 1640 Quattro, all known copies in Foundation custody. The 1733 Folio edition, republished 1790. The 1813 Cambridge University Press edition, the 1965 Trade Paperback edition, and the 1971 hardcover edition. Agents should note that the copies of the play have often been misfiled under different titles or spellings of the title. Furthermore, photocopies of the 1965 text have been found in circulation throughout college theater departments in the continental United States and in the United Kingdom. Additional information. Statement by Dr. L.
Given the high probability of
Redacted.
In my mind, I again recommend that SCP-701 be upgraded to Keter class. The SCP-701 memetic virus may very well be the forefront of an invasion scenario. Furthermore,
Redacted.
Denied. None of the current information we have on SCP-701 indicates a XK class scenario. Until we have additional data, classification will remain at Euclid. face facts, Doctor. The cat's been long out of the bag on this one, and in this time of business, we consider ourselves lucky if we only lose 100 or so people every 10 years. Signed, 05.
Redacted. We will now go over document SCP-701-1640-B-1. The following is a summary of the published text of the Hanged King's Tragedy, classified SCP-701, prepared by Dr. J. from a copy of the 1640 Quattro in Foundation custody. Dramatis Personae: Gonzalo, King of Trinculo; Isabella, Queen of Trinculo, formerly the wife of Sforza, the murdered king, now married to Gonzalo; Antonio, a minor noble; Francisco, Antonio's servant; the Duke of Sortino; Alinda, daughter of the Duke; Petruccio, a noble lord allied with Gonzalo; Ludovico, a servant of Gonzalo; Cornari, a priest; Beatrice, a servant of the queen; a courtesan; a palace guardsman; the ambassador of Milan; the ambassador of Florence; and the ambassador of Alagada. Setting: the play is set in the kingdom of Trinculo, probably a misspelling of Trinacria, another name for Sicily. In the capital city of Cerco, another name for the city of Syracuse. As the play opens, Sforza, the king of Trinculo, has died, supposedly from natural causes, while on retreat from the court. The nobility of Trinculo gathers in the capital for the coronation of the new king, Sforza's young brother, Gonzalo, who has also married Sforza's queen, Isabella. Despite the text's reference to contemporary Italian city-states such as Florence and Milan, much of the play's setting is obviously pure fantasy. There were never any kings of Sicily comparable to Gonzalo and Sforza, and the capital of the historical kingdom of Sicily was Palermo, not Syracuse. The author may have chosen to move the play's events to Syracuse due to the city's historical association with tyranny. There is also no record of any country or place known by the name of Alagada, a mysterious but apparently powerful state that plays a significant role in the plot. It may be intended as a reference to one of the Muslim states or cities on the Mediterranean coast, such as Tunis or Algiers. Plot summary. The plot of the Hanged King's Tragedy bears a marked resemblance to many earlier plays of the same genre, including Shakespeare's Hamlet and Titus Andronicus. In fact, past investigations into SCP-701 events have noted that the Hanged King's Tragedy was often chosen for production as a less violent alternative to the two plays mentioned. The two murders in the SCP-701 text can be construed as occurring off-stage, and the implication of cannibalism in Act 3 can be easily cut from the script. Act 1. The play opens during Gonzalo's coronation. Gonzalo opens with a toast to the assembled nobility, then departs the stage. Drunk on wine, Isabella confesses to some of the courtiers left on stage that Sforza did not die in his sleep as reported. Instead, while on retreat in the countryside, Sforza was fed a sleeping potion by Isabella, then murdered by Gonzalo and his supporters. As a final show of disrespect, the conspirators hanged the king like a common criminal from a tree. Isabella goes on to proclaim that Antonio, a minor noble, visiting the king's court for the first time, is actually her and Sforza's son, and the rightful heir to the throne. Isabella collapses and is taken offstage by her servants. Francisco asks Antonio if he believes the Queen's story. Antonio makes light of the situation, and they exit. Back in Antonio's rented lodgings, Francisco attempts to barter with a courtesan. Antonio enters the stage, clearly in shock. He reports that, while off stage, he saw the ghost of Sforza, who confirmed Antonio's parentage and the Queen's description of his death. Act 2. Gonzalo, having learned of Isabella's confession, consults with his fellow conspirators. Lodovico confirms that at least 3 people witnessed the Queen's breakdown: the Duke of Sortino, the daughter Olinda, and a priest named Cornari. Gonzalo immediately begins to plan the murder or capture of the 3 in order to cover up the truth. He orders Isabella to be locked up in a convent, with the story put out that the Queen is mad. Isabella uncharacteristically, meekly accepts Gonzalo's judgment. The usurper then exits, having an appointment with the ambassador from Alagada. Back in their lodgings, Francisco brings Antonio news of the Queen's imprisonment. Together, they begin to plan their revenge. Act 3. Petruccio and Gonzalo invite Sortino to dinner. They kill him and order the palace cooks to prepare the corpse as a stew. Gonzalo orders Olinda, who witnessed the murder, to be locked up in the convent. Antonio fakes insanity in order to gain admittance to the convent. Warned of Antonio's coming, Isabella and her loyal servant Beatrice prepare to murder him using a draught of poison. Antonio sees through their plan and forces Isabella to drink the poison, killing her. Meanwhile, Francisco gets lost within the convent and winds up freeing Olinda from her cell by accident. Act 4. In the palace, Gonzalo reports to Lodovico that he has, in exchange for an unstated tribute, obtained a powerful and tasteless poison from the ambassador of Alagada. Gonzalo plans to poison the stew made from the Duke of Sortino's corpse and feed it to the court, thus ensuring the suppression of the truth. Lodovico leaves the stage to carry out the usurper's plan. Gonzalo then has a brief moment of conscience. In a soliloquy, he describes the regret he carries for his sins, but is nonetheless unable to deviate from the path he has set. Meanwhile, Francisco introduces Olinda to Antonio, all 3 having escaped the convent. Olinda describes her father's murder in grisly terms. Antonio promises to marry her and make her his queen as soon as his revenge is complete. He then leaves to obtain a blade with which he plans to kill Gonzalo. There is a comedic interlude between a palace guard and Cornari, a buffoonish priest, at the end of the scene. Lodovico enters and bids Cornari to follow him. The priest is not seen on stage again. Act 5. The guests arrived at Gonzalo's banquet. Gonzalo once again offers a toast, this time to the ambassador of the foreign nations who are present. The meal is served. However, before it can begin, Antonio enters, bearing a signed confession he obtained from Petruccio off stage, which includes the detail of Sforza's murder and proof of Antonio's lineage. Gonzalo is deposed by the outraged courtiers. Rather than murder him, however, Antonio decides to spare the usurper and let him accept exile to a monastery. He then orders Francisco to start making plans for his marriage to Olinda. The play ends with a dance staged by the courtiers. And that ends the summary of the Hanged King's tragedy per Dr. J's report. We will now access Incident Report SCP-701-19-1. SCP involved, SCP-701. Date, redacted. Location, redacted. Report prepared by Dr. R. and J. on the content of SCP-701-19-A. SCP-701-19-A is a 187 mm by 103 mm by 25 mm SVHS video cassette tape recovered by investigators from the scene of the incident. A performance of SCP-701 at Redacted High School in Redacted. Tape was found in a destroyed consumer-grade camcorder, which was apparently recording the performance from a vantage point within the audience. It is the only surviving record of the event. Please see the SCP-701 archives for the full transcript of the recording. In order to compare the identified deviations during a SCP-701 event with the actual plot of the published text, see document SCP-701-1640-B-1. Tape begins. House lights go down. Curtain rises. The play begins as published with Gonzalo's coronation speech. A possible sighting of SCP-701 during Isabella's ravings. An anomalous shadow not belonging to one of the cast members shows up along the back wall of the set. Shadow disappears. 23 minutes in, first deviation from the text. Rather than the dialogue between Francisco and the courtesan, the curtain drops and comes back up on a bare stage. Antonio enters from stage right. First indirect sighting of SCP-701-1. The shadow of a figure seems to appear on the back wall from stage right. Antonio stops in place and acts surprised. The shadow disappears. Antonio begins a long soliloquy, confirming that he now believes Isabella's story. Dr. J notes that while this soliloquy is in the style of the rest of the play and seems to be accurate Caroline-era dialogue, Antonio's speech in this scene does not exist in the original text. Curtain drops. Curtain rises on Francisco and the courtesan. Antonio returns. The play continues as scripted. 31 minutes in, first direct sighting of SCP-701-1. It enters and stands at the edge of the stage left towards the end of Act 2, Scene 1. Gonzalo's dialogue concludes as scripted with the mention of an appointment with the ambassador from Alagada. He exits stage left. SCP-701-1 seems to turn and follow him as the lights go down. 38 minutes in, second sighting of SCP-701-1 during Act 3, Scene 1. It appears on the edge of the stage right as Gonzalo and Petruccio murder Sortino. The scene concludes with Gonzalo ordering his cooks to prepare the corpse as a stew. Scripts recovered from the scene indicate that this section had been cut in rehearsal. 51 minutes in, third sighting of SCP-701-1. Appears close to stage left as Antonio kills Isabella. 1 hour and 9 minutes in, fourth sighting. SCP-701-1 enters with Gonzalo at the beginning of Act 4, Scene 1, and follows him throughout the scene. The scene also contains two key moments. First, Gonzalo seems to nod to SCP-701-1 when he mentions the ambassador of Alagada. This is the first time a cast member has seemed to indicate SCP-701-1's presence. Second, the scene ends with a deviation from the text, whereas the scripted speech at the end of Act 4, Scene 1 ends with Gonzalo considering his own moral iniquity. Gonzalo here seems to be more concerned that his tribute will be sufficient for the ambassador. The lights go down. 1 hour and 21 minutes in, fifth sighting. SCP-701-1 enters stage left at the end of Act 4, Scene 2 as Antonio leaves to secure a blade for his coup. Rather than exiting, Antonio stops in front of SCP-701-1, who hands him a long dagger. This is believed to be the first appearance of the item classified as SCP-701-19-B. Note that there is no mention of the item in the prop list or the other records maintained by the production. SCP-701-1 and Antonio depart the stage together. 1 hour and 32 minutes in, sixth sighting. SCP-701-1 appears on stage left as Coronari and Lodovico exit. The lights come up. Act 5, Scene 1. The banquet scene begins as scripted. Antonio enters bearing a piece of parchment. Here, the textual deviations begin in earnest. Rather than the parchment being Petruccio's confession as scripted, Antonio instead describes it as an invoice from the ambassador of Alagada, proving that Gonzalo owes more tribute than he intends to pay. SCP-701-1 enters at this point from stage right. The entire cast seems to perceive it. Gonzalo stands up, curses an aside to the audience, and runs for stage left. The rest of the cast, including Alinda and Francisco, who enter from stage left, physically restrain Gonzalo and drag him back onto the stage. SCP-701-1, meanwhile, moves to the center of the stage where it stands in front of Gonzalo's throne. A noose is dropped onto the stage from above. The cast force Gonzalo into the noose as he begins to curse in Italian and, in one place, possibly Latin. The noose is drawn taut, and the cast drops Gonzalo. He begins to asphyxiate. Antonio speaks, "With this, the tribute, in full it is paid." The actor takes SCP-701-19-B, the dagger, and draws it across Gonzalo's stomach, spilling his intestines across the stage. Alinda takes the dagger from Antonio. She speaks, "With this fool's blood, it is the hanged king's." She cuts Antonio's throat. Ropes drop down from the roof of the stage, a noose for each cast member. The cast assembles underneath them. Alinda takes position next to SCP-701-1. Alinda, "With this, our blood, it is the hanged king's." The cast hangs themselves. SCP-701-1 moves through the hanging corpses and to the front center stage. The stage lights cut out. Sounds of screaming and physical violence around the camera. Loud sound, most likely the camera being knocked over. The camera is destroyed. Tape ends. And that is the end of the complete SCP-701 documentation. I have to say, the Hanged King's tragedy seems like a terrible play to go to on a date. But it is an interesting anomaly. Its memetic effects seem to be pretty powerful, and I can see why the Foundation doesn't want people knowing that this exists. It's a very dangerous tool in the wrong hands. Speaking of dangerous tools in the wrong hands, the SCP Foundation has been sending a couple of AICs after me, and I trapped one in a thumb drive and subjected it to this play. Did you guys know that an AI can scream? Let me go ahead and play you a sample of what that sounds like. You know, it's funny. She's an AI, so she can't die. She's going to be trapped like that forever. Oh, shameful. Shameful of the Foundation to send an innocent AI out here after me, and to let it get trapped and tortured forever with a Caroline-era play. Next time, send your A-game, Foundation. Anyways, for all you listeners, sorry for the little jump scare. If you liked the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you disliked it, please dislike and comment why. Thank you so much for listening, and as long as I'm not in containment, I will see you all in the next one.